قائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. Imam Hassan alayhi salam has a legacy very much understudied. From his intellectual heritage to even his descendants. Both are very much understudied, unfortunately. In the last 9 nights or so, we have given, inshallah, some attention, a glimpse about the intellectual, educational contributions from this great holy Imam, the second Imam of Ahlul Bayt, the culmination of Nubuwwah and Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. However, very little is done with regards to any reading, any writing pieces, portions, thorough analyses on the revolutionary descendants of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. When we examine Islamic history, we will see that a majority of all the revolutions that came against the establishments which were unjust and oppressive were Hassani revolutions. Sayyid al-Shuhada, of course, sealed the deal with regards and respect to all forms of resistance against any form of oppressor. However, one should not look beyond Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam when looking for an example aside from Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Mujtaba himself may not have necessarily confronted the oppressors exactly the same way Sayyid al-Shuhada did. His revolution was a Hassani revolution through the work of penmanship, whereas Sayyid al-Shuhada found it in his circumstances very necessary to raise the sword when the pen could not affect any longer. But we see that the tides have turned when it came to the Imam's descendants. The Hassaniyun or the Hassaniyin from the descendants of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam were people that were really audacious individuals. They had a lot of confidence. And the Hassani Sada live among us today, walhamdulillah wa shukr. And this is in regards to the Quranic promise, Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. One interpretation being the heavenly abode that has within it a very sanctified and purified pool for the Holy Prophet of Islam. We see this in references even in Ashura, until I meet you, and Rasulullah has a kawthar with him. From that kawthar water, he is saving one for me, Al-Akbar says to Sayyid al-Shuhada, and one for you when you get here. In addition, in reference to that, in the line of the Prophet, kathir, kawathir, a lot, an abundance of dhurriya, not only from Imam al-Hussein, but also from Imam al-Hassan. Look at today, you find many Hassanis. I know many, predominantly the Lebanese community, there are a lot of Hassanis, mashallah. The king of Morocco is a Hassani. North Africa has a lot of Hassani Sada. And let's accept the reality that the descendants of Imam al-Hassan spread far and wide, maybe not necessarily the way that Ahlul Bayt through the line of Imam al-Hussein did, but nonetheless we can't look over this. We have to acknowledge this as well. You find these are men of the highest caliber, the Hassaniyun. These were people that raised swords when they saw that there was no chance to even attain victory. They said, I don't care. I have to resist. We look from the start, the legacy of Imam al-Mujtaba begins in Karbala. We don't read much about the family, nuclear family of Imam al-Hassan pre-Karbala. We do see accusations and allegations of which we addressed the other day on the lecture regarding the misconceptions about Imam al-Hassan. أنه كان مطلاق ذواق. These were areas we gave a glimpse about. But the nuclear family of Imam al-Mujtaba primarily revolves around a number of individuals. Brothers and sisters, from what we have ascertained, 100% certainty, Imam al-Mujtaba had for sure 4 sons and 1 daughter. He had on his death 4 wives. From these we found, of course, definitely his oldest, Zayd or Hassan al-Muthanna. We found as well Abdullah, who died in the battle of Karbala. And we find also the great legend Qasim ibn al-Hassan. We also found as-Sayyida Fatima bint al-Imam al-Mujtaba, Sayyidah Fatima bint al-Imam al-Hassan, she married Imam Zain al-Abidin, and from her and him, the culmination of Hassan and Hussein in Imam al-Baqir. From his maternal side, Imam al-Mujtaba. From his paternal side, Imam al-Hussein. He is the product of both as-Sibtain, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam. However, we observe that he had these 4 wives, and this we can confirm. Put us to the side the allegations by the likes of Abu Talib al-Makki in his Qut al-Qulub, the 9th century scholar who says Imam al-Mujtaba died and 300 women came out, latimat and crying, and these were all of his wives. This is an accusation that is petty, and we have examined this, and honestly, it's not even worth our time to examine 300 wives of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. Another one of these Abbasid Sakhif allegations towards our Imam. He had Bashir, he had indeed Khawla al-Fizariya, Ramla al-Fizariya, and Ishaq bint Talha bin Ubaidillah al-Taymi. These women, and of course, let's not forget, he had Ju'da bint al-Ash'ath bin Qais al-Kindi, who was the cause of his martyrdom. Tomorrow we will examine that. I highly encourage all of you, tomorrow is our last day, the maqtal of Imam al-Hassan in details we will examine inshallah. This was his nuclear family, meaning that inner circle. On the day of Ashura, he lost most of his sons. He was survived by 2. Zayd, he had a son named Zayd, and he had a son by the name of Hassan al-Muthanna. He named him after himself. And so he was titled al-Muthanna, the dual, the second. If you have a son and he shares your name, or if you have a daughter and she shares your name, it is typical to give them the laqab or kunya al-Muthanna, meaning it's me, then the second one. Hassan al-Muthanna was married to Imam al-Hussein's daughter, Fatima al-Kubra. Imam al-Hussein had a number of daughters, 4. The eldest was Sayyida Sukaina, then he had Fatima al-Kubra, then he had Ruqayya, then he had, according to many traditions, Fatima al-Alila, who stayed behind al-Madinah al-Munawwara. She was ill. Fatima al-Kubra, the second eldest, married Hassan al-Muthanna, Imam Hassan's son. From them, the Hassani lineage came. This was a moment, brothers and sisters, that was very critical, because Hassan Muthanna fought in Karbala. He survived. One of the very few survivors in Karbala, by the way, from the men. It was only a handful, no more than 5. From the women and children, the majority of them lived on. Some of them died on their way. Some of them died in Waqi'at al-Taf. Others died in Kufa. Others died in Mosul. Others died in Halab, Aleppo, Syria. Others died in Sham. And on the way back, others died as well. But the majority of the men died except these handful. Hassan Muthanna was one of them. He lost his arm in Karbala. And he was barely alive. He had 1 breath of life inside of him. He was saved. What happened with him? This is the descendant, and this is the legacy of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. Very much, unfortunately, understudied. As much as even the intellectual legacy of Imam al-Mujtaba sadly is understudied, let alone his own family heritage as well. This is why, inshallah ta'ala, tonight we can try to our most, in a modest format, a mutawadi' format, to do some justice to that, inshallah ta'ala. Hassan al-Muthanna, Imam al-Mujtaba's son, he survived, but in a unique way. The killers of Imam al-Hussein allowed him to live, even after they tried to kill him. What went on was this. If you recall, after Sayyid al-Shuhada was martyred in Karbala, Shimr ibn Dhul Jawshan told Umar ibn Sa'd, I want you to collect the horse riders and let them insult Imam Hussein further by trampling. But before Hussein, insult the companions. Each one said, we will not allow this, because each person of Imam al-Hussein had a relative, had a close person on the opposition. So for example, they said trample on the horse of Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi. Banu Riyaha was his family. Banu Riyaha was on the opposition. They were there. Hurr was initially fighting with Umar ibn Sa'd. When he transitioned, some of his cousins were still behind. They didn't transition. So they were like, la, you told us to kill him, we killed him. He betrayed us. But we're not going to add insult onto injury by trampling over his body. We're family. Even if your ashira kills you, they still have this ghira for you. That's how it works, subhanAllah, the mentality. No, this is my cousin. I'll beat him up, but I'm not going to humiliate him. Mindset, I don't know how that works. So they went through one by one by one. They get to Al-Qasim. How about you trample over Abbas, Abul Fadl Abbas, al-Banin, Salamullahi alayhima. She was a relative to Shimr ibn Dhul-Jawshin from a distant cousins. They said we can't trample him. They get to Ali al-Akbar. Ali al-Akbar, his mother Layla, is the niece of Muawiyah. Muawiyah's sister, Maysoon. She was Maymoon. She was Layla's mother. And so Yazid and her are first cousins. Like, no, don't trample over Ali al-Akbar because Yazid won't like it. When they get to Al-Qasim, members of the opposition from the Fizara tribe. Al-Qasim, his mother, goes by the name of As-Sayyida Ramla. She was from the Fizara family. The Fizaris were represented on the opposition. And so they said, don't trample over Al-Qasim. This Hassan al-Muthanna was also a Fizari. And so he survived. Again, his arm was amputated. When back then, especially when you lose such an important limb, there's no chance of survival. He was barely breathing, left on the ground. His family thought he died. When they came to examine the bodies, the Fizaris on the opposition that first contested, don't trample over Qasim, this is our cousin. Like, oh, that's our other cousin too, he's still breathing. Save him. So they brought Al-Hassan al-Muthanna. Again, this is all Imam Hassan's family right now. History never gives a glimpse of these individuals, unfortunately. What they went through, what happened with them, the circumstances. La, Karbala happened, I don't need to know anymore. No, examine, it's worth the effort. Because empires were built in the name of Imam al-Hassan. The Dawla al-Idrisiyya in Morocco lasted hundreds of years. The Hassani revolutions, so on and so forth. So this is very paramount, just even in basic modern history. Hassan Muthanna was brought back to life. Survived, and the Fizaris brought him to Kufa like they did with the captives of Imam al-Hussein's family. But just a disclaimer, I understand this might come across as rather comprehensive, and maybe some people might not have a taste for history, but the reality is, if we want to examine the revolutionary descendants of Imam al-Mujtaba, it's worth the glimpse of history and the pages that we must open. In any case, Hassan al-Muthanna was brought, so dual, Muthanna, Ithnain, was brought to Kufa. He was brought back to life, nursed to life, even though he had his arm amputated. The rest of the family of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam went to Sham. He stayed back in Kufa. Why? His family's there to take care of him, the Fizaris. He stayed in Kufa. He was brought back to life. Imam Zayn al-Abidin allowed that to be the case. You've done your deal, you did the deed, you fought, you didn't die, it's not your fault. Of course, the biggest honor is to die alongside Sayyid al-Shuhada. Allah didn't give you that tawfiq, you can stay. In Kufa, you are allowed to stay, and I actually have a couple people I know who used to work for Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib in Kufa, because Imam Ali made Kufa his capital, who actually have some money from the treasury reserve. They still have it, they didn't give it to the Khalifa, nor did they give it to the Khalifa's representative in Kufa, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. They still held on to it. It's not your money, it's the money of the Imam. After Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, it goes to Imam al-Mujtaba. After Imam al-Mujtaba, Sayyid al-Shura. After that, Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, these funds, I give them to you. Ya Hassan al-Muthanna, revive yourself with them. So he stayed in Kufa. They say that Hassan al-Muthanna, Ridwanullahi alayh, he stayed in Kufa until he grew with his wife. Eventually, when he met up with her, Fatima, the daughter of Imam al-Hussein, they lived in Kufa together. Eventually, one day, the governor of Kufa, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, was sacked. Eventually, a new governor came. This governor would eventually become the Khalifa by the name of Al-Hajjaj bin Yusuf al-Thaqafi. So inshallah we're following the timeline. I know we're going Karbala, Kufa, then Khalifa. It's inshallah not too comprehensive. We can manage here because this is very vital to understand what went on. And there was an event tantamount to the event of Karbala called Waqi'atul Fakhr. Imam Al-Jawad says the second biggest tragedy to us Ahlul Bayt after Karbala was this event, which the Hassanis did and revolted and were responsible for. So in order to understand these, inshallah ta'ala, these details are very necessary. He was brought back to life, and then you saw the governor of Kufa by the name of Al-Hajjaj bin Yusuf al-Thaqafi noticed Hassan al-Muthanna, where on earth are you getting all this money from? He coerced him to tell him that I have a number of people that live in Kufa who have access to a reserve, kind of like a bank. Back then you had no credit cards, so the only money was actual, physical, palpable, tangible money. And so we have a box and we have that saved. Dirahim and dinar. He said, listen, this is your right. Hajjaj acknowledged, this belonged to your father. I'm not going to steal it from you, but you have to give some to the state. You see, like when people tax others, a portion of it goes to the state. So we can't avoid taxes today, nor could they avoid taxes back then, subhanAllah. Give some to the state. He, Al-Hassan al-Muthanna, said, la, it's haram, all of it is mine. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib owns it, so it's inheritance. Inheritance, you don't pay any form of huquq on, you don't pay any form of charity on, nor do you pay tax. So I can't give it to you. Al-Hajjaj said, listen, I am going to speak to the Khalifa. At the time, it was not Al-Hajjaj, he was the governor. The Khalifa who Al-Hajjaj worked under goes by the name of Ibn Marwan, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. He lived in Sham. Abdul Malik bin Marwan, he's like, you go to him and you argue this case. So Al-Hassan al-Muthanna goes all the way to Sham and he wants to argue that the money is mine. He goes to Sham. On his way, he runs into a man traveling to Sham. And he says, who are you? It's very dangerous to admit you're connected to the Ahlul Bayt. And so he's like, you know what, you've been my travel buddy for a while, because Kufa to Sham is a distance. I'll let you know. My name is Hassan, son of Hassan al-Muthanna. The man said, son of Hassan al-Muthanna, my name is Hassan al-Muthanna, son of Hassan al-Sibt, Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. The man was stunned. He's like, and where are you going? He says, I'm going to see the Khalifa. There's a money issue. I have to convince him it's all mine. As opposed to what the governor of Kufa is saying. The man accompanying him says, it's your lucky day. The Khalifa is my cousin. We're best friends. I'm also going to see him. When you get there, I'll stand by you and I'll intercede for you. He's like, Alhamdulillah. The stars are aligned. They get to Sham and they meet. Instantly the Khalifa, Abdul Malik bin Marwan. He looks at him. As soon as he walks in, he recognizes him. The signs of Banu Hashim are very indicative. These people are not your average individuals. Hassan al-Muthanna resembled his father a lot. Hence why even he was called Al-Hassan. He says, Anta al-Hassan. He's like, yes. He says, and what did you come for? He says, I came, and this man will testify with me, his travel buddy, that I am trying to prove there's a treasure in Kufa, it belongs to me. And this man will testify. Abdul Malik bin Marwan says, and do you testify? He's like, I am here to testify opposite to that. Hassan al-Muthanna, this man is stealing money and he is trying to collect people to become a soldier, to become soldiers for him and become the Imam and Khalifa above you. Hassan al-Muthanna looks like, what the heck is wrong with you? We made a deal. He's like, no, you're a liar, and ya Abdul Malik, you have to put him in jail and reward me for bringing this to your attention. Eventually they debated and argued, and Hassan al-Muthanna looks at him and is like, I will stand and complain to Allah in front of Allah on the day of judgment for your sake about you. The argument happened. The Khalifa said, look, I don't care. Go back to Kufa. You still have to give some to the treasury. This was Imam al-Hassan's son. He lived in that circumstances, and from then on he kept an identity no one knew. Sometimes he would change his name. Other times he would say, just call me Abdullah. He lived literally in hiding. Imam al-Hassan's son. Notice this was the only living descendant of Imam al-Mujtaba at the time. Zayd, the son of Imam al-Hassan, still didn't have any children. So literally, if he dies, انقطع نسل Imam al-Mujtaba. The family tree of Imam al-Hassan would die at that moment, and he was barely holding on to life. He goes back to Kufa, and he is blessed with a son. This son is someone special by the name of Abdullah, son of Hassan al-Muthanna, son of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, son of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. Abdullah, they called him Abdullah al-Mahadh. Abdullah al-Mahadh, al-Mahadh means the pure, meaning filtered, meaning there are no impurities. Why did they call them that? They would say, min shiddati jamalihi ka'annahu fayliqu badrin. Abdullah was an extremely illuminating man. His face, they say, we couldn't tell what looked more bright. Was it the moon at night, or was it Abdullah, the son of Hassan al-Muthanna? He was an extremely attractive individual. Again, the culmination of Imam al-Hussein from his daughter, and the culmination of Imam al-Hassan, salamullahi alayh. And so Abdullah al-Mahad lived in the city of Medina. Abdullah al-Mahad was given a son. He also got married and he had a son. This son is really famous. Most Iraqis know this guy. His name is Muhammad dhun Nafs al-Zakiyya. Muhammad dhun Nafs al-Zakiyya, many families, they beseech Allah through him, especially particularly families that are unable to have children. They say, Ya Allah, through Muhammad. This also can be coupled with Muhammad Sab'i Dajjal, the brother of Imam al-Hadi. Iraqis really love this guy, and for good reason, of course, as most Shia should, inshallah. But Muhammad dhun Nafs al-Zakiyya, if you notice the name, Dhu an-Nafs al-Zakiyya. And the term, the possessive dhu in Arabic means to own something, ownership. So he has what? An-Nafs al-Zakiyya, the purified soul. Now we're getting to the great-great-grandchildren of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. This is an entire heritage, sadly understudied. One day I would be so delighted to see if a PhD can be written about this, a master's thesis, a dissertation, the Hassani revolutions, the revolutionary children and descendants of Imam al-Hassan and their thawrat and efforts. It's a very understudied area, I don't know why, but so much material is there, ya subhanallah. And this would bring so much light to the dark area of history that is sadly understudied, brothers and sisters. Muhammad dhun Nafs al-Zakiyya, something went on. I don't know what it was. But it seems, according to history, that society convinced him that he was the Mahdi. Why? Because the non-Shi'i hadith ascertains that the Mahdi, his name is what? Muhammad. In our Aqidah, Muhammad son of Hassan. In the non-Shi'i Aqidah, what's his full name? Muhammad son of Abdullah. What's his name? Muhammad son of Abdullah al-Mahad, the pure one, son of Hassan al-Mushtaba. And the Mahdi is from the line of who? Rasulullah. Ahlul Sunnah, what do they say? Mahdi is from the line of Rasulullah, but from the line of Hassan. Muhammad dhun Nafs al-Zakiyya, son of Abdullah, his name is Muhammad, son of Abdullah, from the line of Hassan. And he had the qualities of someone that you would think is an ardent scholar, erudite scholar. He was tall. He had the qualities of his father, that Jama that you imagine. He was someone that was an abid as well. He was strong. So people were like, I'm not too surprised if you're the next Imam. And Muhammad dhun Nafs al-Zakiyya, it may have gotten to him. We don't know necessarily, but he was somehow convinced. We at least know this for sure, that he was convinced. Someone who also convinced him was his own father, Abdullah al-Mahad. Now some people are probably raising questions or concerns. Ya Ammi, these are all the family of the Ahlul Bayt. Why are they saying he's the Mahdi when, for example, Imam al-Baqir is around, Imam Sadiq is around at this time? Where are you guys going? Come this way. You are cousins of the righteous Ahlul Bayt. Well, I mean, at the time when the Ahlul Bayt just saw Karbala, they're not necessarily holding megaphones or billboards pointing at them. They're living their lives in taqiyya. And you know, it was not just Muhammad, it was Zayd al-Shaheed, the son of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, who also revolted. Mukhtar al-Thaqafi revolted. The whole world was ticked off. How on earth did the Ummah do this to the family of Rasulullah in Karbala? Everyone was mad. And so, fueled with anger, Muhammad dhun Nafs al-Zakiyya sees that he has these qualities in himself. It got into his mind, maybe I am the Mahdi. Maybe I'm Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. And I need to avenge the blood that was spilled in Karbala. أين الطالب بدم المقتول بكربلاء. My family, father, Abdullah, let's go. Where do we go? We have to meet in secrecy. Bani Umayyah, their last Khalifa was around. Last Khalifa, by the way, the last Khalifa of Bani Umayyah, after Abd al-Malik bin Marwan and Walid bin Abd al-Malik, came this individual named Marwan II. And this is a nice name, by the way, because in Arabic they call him Marwan al-Himar. Why? Because he was such an incompetent ruler. He was very pathetic of a ruler, swimming pools of alcohol, nothing to do with Islam. They literally called him Marwan the Mule. He was the last Umayyad leader. They said, this man, this is a nonsense of a man. This is not a man, this is an animal. Let's overthrow him. And so Muhammad dhun Nafs al-Zakiyya, tall, strong, intelligent, has the qualities of the Ahlul Bayt. He says, Father, and all my brothers, because he had multiple brothers as well. He had a brother named Ibrahim. Let's all go and meet between Mecca and Medina. Mecca, Medina are two critical cities. Let's not meet there. Let's meet between Mecca and Medina in a city called Abwa. Al-Abwa is a city where Imam al-Qasim was born in, alayhi salam. He was born in that city. The only Imam, by the way, that wasn't born in either Samarra, if we reference Imam al-Hadi, Imam al-Askari, Sahib al-Asr, Radiallahu ta'ala Farajul Sharif, or Mecca, like Imam al-Amir al-Mu'mineen, or Medina, like the rest of the Imams. Abwa, Imam al-Qasim was born there. They meet in that city, Abwa, and they called it in history, Mu'tamar Abwa, the conference of Abwa. Why did they call it a conference? So many families from the Alawi side gathered. They gathered in Abwa. They brought the family from Al-Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet, and his descendants. Those who attended were Abdullah al-Mahad, Hassan al-Muthanna's children, Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyya, Ibrahim, his brother, the Abbasid family who would later become Khulafa, As-Saffah, Abdullah bin Muhammad, Abu al-Abbas As-Saffah, and his brother Abu Ja'far al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi. You know, these guys all became Khulafa later. They all gathered. They looked around and they said, we're all going to pledge allegiance. Muhammad will take us to a new era. He will usher a new generation. Al-Rida min Ali Muhammad will be the slogan. Ya li tharat al-Hussein, avenge that blood of Abu Abdullah. Give bay'ah to Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyya. They all said, Bay'atuka lillah fil maut, yabna Rasulillah. They all pledged allegiance. They're like, oh, there's a hand that's missing. A very important hand. Oh, it's not just any hand. It's the most significant hand. Where is Ja'far al-Sadiq? Imam al-Sadiq didn't attend this. Where the heck is he? If he doesn't give bay'ah, this is all gone. Imam al-Sadiq is the most important of this ashira. Let's bring him. Where is he? They called Imam al-Sadiq. Imam al-Sadiq purposely didn't attend this convention. They brought him. Imam al-Sadiq came and he's quiet. They repeat the speech. Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyya. He'll take us to victory. Give him bay'ah, yabna Rasulullah. Now, Imam al-Sadiq is supposed to give bay'ah to his cousin from Imam al-Hassan's side. Imam al-Sadiq looks and he says, I've read inside Mushaf Fatima al-Zahra. The Mushaf of Fatima is a political book that shows who will rule the Muslim Ummah until the reappearance of the awaited Savior. Until. So we ask, Ya Allah, allow us to be written as among the Shi'as in that book, Ya Rabbil Alameen. That Sayyidah Zahra perhaps glanced over our names, inshallah ta'ala, who will rule. And I didn't see Muhammad mentioned as one of the Khulafa. They said, then who did you see? Rather, I saw him and him, pointing at As-Saffah and pointing at Al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi. These guys were like, so you're not going to give bay'ah? No, I'm not. Imam al-Sadiq then goes away. Like, well, this man came and ruined everything. We brought him to give bay'ah. He completely ruined our plans. Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyya didn't like that. Abdullah, his father, was there and he started arguing. He's like, come back. Where do you think you're going? Yeah, and you're going to miss a chance to avenge your grandfather? And he hits him personally. Your grandfather, everything that happened, you know how it's just like a family feud that goes on. Death, especially when death is involved, yeah, it's the most worst discussion, yeah, subhanAllah. You're going to do that, avenge your family, avenge this, you're going to miss the chance? Imam al-Sadiq was just listening to them. Look, it's not up to me. Back then, you guys are supposed to give me allegiance. I'm the Imam, I am Hujjatullah ala khalqih. But go do what you like. Just so you know, you are dead and you guys are all going to die. And these guys, our cousins from Banu al-Abbas, will be the people who will rule eventually. Muhammad, Abdullah's son, stays in Medina. The Abbasid side of, because they're all cousins, Banu al-Abbas, the Hassani, and the Husseini. They're all three cousins. They live and they just want to overthrow Banu Umayyah. The Abbasid side go to Kufa. The Hassani side stays in Medina. This is very critical to remember. Why? Because Medina and Mecca are the worst cities to have any revolution. It's a desert. There's no way if you're going to get captured and sieged, there's no way you can live, because the Quran even calls it Wadin Ghayri Dhi Zar'. It's a land you can't even grow plants in it. And so if you are held, besieged, you can't survive. Kufa, Imam Ali moved his capital there because it was more strategic. And so the Abbasids go there. They said to themselves, you know that Ja'far al-Sadiq, he said it is going to be us, we will rule. Let's give it a shot. As-Saffah collects a number of people and they use the same slogan, Al-Rida min Ali Muhammad. That satisfaction from Allah can only come from the family of Rasulullah, from the Ahlul Bayt. People said, we like that. We want Ahlul Bayt to be brought back to power. But they didn't mean Ahlul Bayt from the line of Ali and Fatima. They meant themselves Ahlul Bayt because they're from the line of whom? Al-Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet. And Al-Abbas is a Sayyid. Because what's a Sayyid at the end of the day? You know, I hear this argument sometimes. Technically, is Imam Ali really a Sayyid? Because Sayyid is someone who claims descendant from Rasulullah. Imam Ali married Sayyida Zahra. So how is he a Sayyid? I mean, if Imam Ali is not a Sayyid, no one's a Sayyid. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib is Sayyidu Sana. Chill out. But Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen and everyone get the status of being considered a Sayyid, which by the way doesn't mean you're better than anyone else. I've seen Sada, I'm like, are you sure your grandfather was Rasulullah or Qarun? I've seen people that you think these guys are not Sada. But it doesn't add anything. It adds more responsibility. One can imagine that, look, you should behave yourself. Your grandfather is Rasulullah, behave yourself, you and your shenanigans. But it doesn't give you preliminary head start or anything like that. But Al-Abbas, technically the rule is this, Banu Hashim. And Hashim, Abdul Muttalib, if you're from that line, which Al-Abbas, Abu Lahab, and all these people are, then yes, Sada. So they're like, Ar-Rida min Al Muhammad, we can technically be considered Al Muhammad. People gave them bay'ah with the false presuppositions. As-Saffah gained power in Kufa. Kufa is more optimal to have a revolution than Medina and Mecca. And Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah said, Ya Sadiq min Al Muhammad, I don't care what you say. Ja'far al-Sadiq, I don't care. I'm going to rise. Imam al-Sadiq stayed quiet. He rose, he collected a few hundred people only. As-Saffah rose, and he was very powerful. They clashed a bit. Then As-Saffah dies. Who becomes Khalifa? The man that Imam Sadiq said it would be first you, Ya Saffah, then you, Ya Abu Ja'far al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi. Subhanallah, it was Abu Ja'far al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi who killed Imam Sadiq eventually. We understand it was him, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, who was the reason why Imam Sadiq was poisoned. And it was Imam Sadiq who said, I know what your fate will be eventually. He became the Khalifa in Kufa. Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah is still in Medina fighting. He now has Medina under his control. Kufa is under the control of al-Diwaniqi. Diwaniqi brings all his men and he wants to destroy Muhammad in Medina. He gets to Medina, he can't find Muhammad. He's like, where did he go? Muhammad and his brother Ibrahim, they vanished. Because Ibrahim and Muhammad were partners basically. But Muhammad was the Imam, supposedly speaking. He believed he was the Mahdi. His brother Ibrahim was a firm believer in his Imamah. By the way, this was a group that emerged. They believed in the Imamah of Muhammad. So after Imam Zainul Abidin and after Imam al-Baqir, it wasn't Imam al-Sadiq that was the Imam. It was Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah. This was an actual madhab that survived for only a few tens of years and it went away. They go to Medina, al-Diwaniqi and his men, to sack Medina and get rid of Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah, and they're like, where is he? So they go to his dad. His dad, Abdullah, is still alive. He's an old man by this point. He's very old. And he goes to Abdullah, but subhanAllah, he says, it's as if I am staring in the face of Al-Hassan himself, from how illuminating and radiating your face is. Ya Abdullah, you are truly al-mahad, you are pure from impurities. Tell me, Ya Abdullah, cousin of mine, Habibi, where is your son Muhammad? He's a troublemaker. Don't tell me where your son is. Where's Ibrahim? You're not going to tell me where he is? Abdullah, you're making it difficult. I don't like the fact that when we gathered in Abwa, do you remember that he said, I am the Imam? You heard Ja'far al-Sadiq. He said he's not going to be in it to me. Show me where your son is. Abdullah's like, Wallah, I don't know where he is. He's like, I don't believe you. You know what they did to Abdullah? Again, the family of Imam Hassan, so understudied. They beat him up so bad. Abdullah, his mother was still alive. She was very old. His mom was still alive. He went back to his mother's home. She says, who are you? I can't recognize you. From how much they beat him up. They went after him because they knew he had that glow to him. And they made sure to get rid of it from how much he wouldn't comply with them. He honestly didn't know where Muhammad was. Then he takes Abdullah and puts him in jail. in jail in Medina, then in jail in Iraq. He gets to jail, he dies in prison. Muhammad comes and emerges from Medina. He was in hiding. His brother Ibrahim went all the way to Basra. And they made a plan. They said, in the middle of Ramadan, I, with the little men I have, and you, Ya Ibrahim, with whatever men you can find in Basra, we will overthrow the government. We will overthrow that establishment. In the middle of Ramadan, Muhammad emerged with his sword, and Ibrahim, the son of Abdullah, the brother of Muhammad ibn Zakiyah, in Basra, emerged with a sword with only a couple hundred men. Al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi, according to hadith, 130,000 men. Destroyed them completely gone. They say Imam Sadiq alayhi salam turned around and he literally said, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Scholars, they have different opinions about this situation. They're like, what is our stance with Muhammad bin Zakiyah? And he called for Imam, he said he was Mahdi. One interpretation by Al-Allam al-Amini, the compiler of the compendium Al-Ghadir, a very massive work of narrations that revolve around every proof regarding the event of Ghadir Khum. He says, I've studied this moment in history. It's a very dark moment. And I don't conclude that Muhammad called for imamah. No, he didn't. Muhammad was doing taqiyya for Imam Sadiq's sake. Let the world go after me. Imam Sadiq, even when you see my father saying, what's wrong with you, give bay'ah to him, that was because they were trying to bring a safety net for Imam Sadiq. For indeed, why would Imam Sadiq then say, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un to someone that was a fasiq, for example? So he concludes taqiyya. You don't know what taqiyya is? Taqiyya is a situation where you fear death. What about you forget your life, the life of your imam? You're going to put on a persona that's completely different. Even if it means you have to fake like you're an imam to protect your true imam, you have to do it. So he says, La, Muhammad, radwanullahi ta'ala ala, an-nafs al-zakiyya haqqan, for what he did. And yes, he revolted, but he didn't succeed. What else was he going to do? Just sit back and see society crumble in front of him? He revolted. You have another individual from the line of Imam Hassan, brothers and sisters. This one, I would really appreciate your attention here, because this man, the similarities between him and Imam al-Hussein are uncanny. His name is Hussein. His father's name is Ali. He has a sister named Sayyida Zainab. But he's not from the time of 61 AH. Oh no, he was around during the time of Imam al-Qasim alayhi salam. He also revolted. And he's not from the line of Imam al-Hussein. He's from the line of Imam al-Hassan. So Hussein al-Hassani. They call him Hussein bin Ali al-Khayr, aka Hussein al-Fakhri. Fakh, waqi'atul Fakh. Fakh is a city outside of Medina. This Hussein al-Hassani from the descendants of Imam al-Hassan revolted in that city. Hence why he got that title. Do you know how much this broke Ahlul Bayt's heart when he revolted? Imam al-Rida critiqued poetry that didn't include Hussein's land where he was killed when it mentioned where the Ahlul Bayt are buried. Du'bal bin Ali al-Khuza'i has a very famous, beautiful poem. We've heard of it. أَفَاطِمٌ لَوْ خِلْتِ الْحُسَيْنَ مُجَدَّلًا وَقَدْ مَاتَ عَطْشَانًا بِشَطِّ فُرَاتِ. In it, he then continues and describes where the Ahlul Bayt are buried. فَقَبْرٌ بِطِيبَةٍ وَقَبْرٌ بِكُوفَةٍ. Imam al-Rida then add this one, وَقَبْرٌ بِطُوسٍ. He's like, what? Imam is buried in Tus. He's like, I will be buried in Tus. And then he also adds, وَقَبْرٌ بِفَخٍ. And a grave in Fakh as well. Imam al-Rida heard this and he fainted, salamullahi alayh. He couldn't handle it. It was really deep on him. Imam al-Jawad, his son, he said, Wallah, the most a'zam musib and masjara that happened, bloodbath that occurred after Karbala to us Ahlul Bayt is this event. Waqi'atul Fakh. How many Shia can talk about it today? This is a tragedy of the heritage of Imam al-Hassan that's understudied, unfortunately. So sad and preposterous. Why? And it's not necessarily the fault of the Shia. It's not. It's the fault of Banu Umayyah, Banu al-Abbas, and the empires that came to remove from Imam Hassan's sanctity. If they're going to call Imam al-Mujtaba someone that only cared about his lustful desires in this dunya, and he had 300 wives, and he had a stuttering issue, and he had this and that problem, who's going to care to study about his descendants if they hurt the patriarch himself, al-Imam al-Humam, al-Mujtaba salawatullahi alayh? Who's going to bother to study his descendants, let alone his great-great-great-grand descendants as well? But the reality is that shouldn't be the case. We should not be victims of educational terrorism. Sometimes you find violent terrorism that really involves swords. But sometimes there's educational terrorism as well, where people have worked their socks off through media and propaganda that now the rights will never ever be given again, and they are usurped. But that's going to change. Because in the 21st century today, we are the students of the man that said, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُؤْمِنٍ وَمُؤْمِنَةٍ. And a fariḍah, seeking knowledge, is an obligation upon every. Rasulullah didn't shy. Every mu'min and mu'minah. Use both terms right then and there. A fariḍah is an obligation, the same terminology that is used with salah, min al-fara'id. The list, salah, som, zakat, hajj. Fariḍah now includes what? Talabul ilm, pursuing knowledge. In this situation, you found a man during the life of Imam al-Qasim alayhi salam. He is not ambiguous though. With Muhammadun Nafs al-Zakiyya, Imam Hassan's great-great-grandson, some people debated, did he call for imamah? Did Imam Sadiq approve? Why did they force him? That's something that's discussed. But Hussein is different. Everyone agrees. This Hussein al-Khair, they call him. Who is Hussein? He is Hussein, son of Ali. They call him Ali al-Abid, by the way, his dad. Ali, the worshipper of Allah. Hussein, son of Ali al-Abid, bin Hassan al-Muthanna, the third Hassan. Bin Hassan al-Muthanna, the second Hassan. Bin Hassan al-Sibt, Imam al-Hassan. So Imam al-Hassan's son here goes like this. Imam Hassan had a son named Hassan al-Muthanna, who barely survived, we talked about him. Who had a son named Hassan al-Muthallath, who had a son named Ali al-Abid, who had a son named Hussein al-Khair. Hussein al-Khair resembled a lot of Muhammad bin Nafs al-Zakiyya. Tall, servant of Allah, Abid. He had all these qualities. Everyone loved him. He's a narrator, by the way, in our ahadith. You find him mentioned in the Wasa'il. You can find him in the Tahdhib even as well, by the way. Tahdhib is about ahkam and fiqh. You can even find him there. Why? He narrates from Imam al-Qasim alayhi salam. He was his companion and his cousin. But he's not a Husseini Hussein. He is a Hassani Hussein from the lines of Imam Hassan. This Hussein actually went to Imam al-Qasim. He said, Yabna Rasulullah, Yabna al-Am, my cousin, my paternal cousin, I can't handle seeing this. At the time, the Khalifa goes by the name of Al-Hadi. He resides in Baghdad, Al-Abbasi. This Al-Hadi, the Shia, he has never spared a single Alawi or Alawiyya. You know, at the time, Imam al-Qasim, what he witnessed? There was a man, this man was a really interesting individual. The Khalifa brought him in and he says, can you give your life to me? He's like, I'll give you my life. He's like, what more can you give? He says, I'll give you my family's life. He's like, I want more than that. He's like, I'll give you my religion. He's like, good. Enter the room, you'll find 3 different rooms. Each room has 99 people. Each room has different categories. The first room, 99 little boys and girls. The second, teenagers. The third, elderly. By the way, all of them are from the Alawi family. From Imam Ali and Fatima al-Zahra. From how much the family of Rasulullah was persecuted. You know, they wrote books called Maqatil al-Talibiyin. The persecution of the family from Abu Talib's line. Imam Ali, Hassan, Hussein and Fatima, their descendants were killed. This Hussein al-Khair said, oh by the way, and that man was told to kill all of them. This Hussein al-Khair said, I can't handle this. Imam al-Qasim, do I have your blessings? Imam al-Qasim said, go, but I want you to know you are going to die. He says, it's fine, then go. He actually got the green light from Imam al-Qasim here. He rose. He brought his sister. Her name was Sayyidah Zainab too. And he went to Medina. He goes to the Manara, the minaret of the Prophet's mosque. Why does he go there? It's the tallest building in Medina. He climbs up it. He tells the mu'adhin, he's like, Ya mu'adhin, I do not want to hear you do the wrong adhan. You go up and you say the adhan properly. He's like, what do you mean? He says, you say, Hayya ala khair al-amal. Say it. Because in the non-Shia adhan, they don't add Hayya ala khair al-amal. He's like, say it. He's like, but that's not how we do adhan here. He's like, no. Today's different. We're having a revolution. Call. And he says, the adhan, he gets to the point and he's like, Hayya ala khayr al-amal. Everyone was erupted. What's going on here? This is bizarre, unusual, indifferent. A revolution started. Hussein al-Khair gathers men. He's not bloodbath everyone. No, he gathers his men. He takes them outside to the land known as Fakhr. And then Al-Hadi, the caliph, knows that this is happening. He dispatches over 100,000 soldiers. They clash with Hussein. He only has a couple hundred. They fight. And when they fight, Hussein and his Ahlul Bayt are all killed. His women are taken captive. Their heads are paraded on spears just like the event of Ashura, and they're taken to Kufa. Exactly similar to what happened in Ashura. The word reached Imam al-Qasim, and then Imam al-Qasim said, Rahimakallah ya Hussein. May Allah's mercy be upon you, O Hussein. For truly you are like you were named by society. You are definitely al-Khair. You revolted. All these attempts failed, of course. But it brought some sort of solace to see someone fighting the resistance that was an oppressive, unjust society and establishment at the time. And you know the only people that did it, barring Zayd al-Shaheed from the line of Imam al-Hussein, Imam Hussein's grandson, were all Hassani. But brothers and sisters, we hear these names, Abdullah, Muhammad, Hussein al-Khair, all these Hassanis, from how much they gave their lives and sacrificed. One man from the line of Imam al-Hassan still rings in our hearts and ears today. I made a mistake, not a man. One boy still rings in our ears when he calls out, إن تنكروني فأنا نجل الحسن القاسم ibn al-Hassan. That man, that young boy, his sacrifice, and he sufficient is that Al-Qasim is the living descendant of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. From all those who came, no one still affects the heart like this Hassani warrior. Because he came to his uncle Imam al-Hussein and he said to him, Uncle, this is not going to be a good end. Then Imam Hussein looks at him and he says, my beloved son, how do you see death in that case? He says, Wallah, inna al-mawta bayna yadayk ahla indi min al-asal. Wallah, dying between your hands is sweeter to me than honey. Aba Abdullah embraced him. He is his only, at that moment, living memory of Imam al-Mujtaba salamullahi alayh that is willing to volunteer the fight. Of course, he begs the Imam. And the Imam says, no, I'm not going to let you do this. You are young and your mother wants you. And how do I have a heart to send my beloved nephew like that to a field of monsters? He goes back. Some ahadith make mention that he brings a letter that Imam al-Mujtaba had written for him. Other ahadith speak about that Imam al-Mujtaba's son al-Qasim was insisting, and his mother said, no, you go. So she made him wear the imamah of Imam al-Hassan. When Imam al-Hussein saw this, he couldn't handle it any longer. He saw his brother coming back, but this time not at the age of 47 when Imam al-Hassan was martyred, but at the age of 14. And Aba Abdullah began to cry, and he kept his silence. And he interpreted that silence, this Al-Qasim, as the acceptance from Sayyid al-Shuhada. When Al-Qasim goes out to the field, he begins to introduce himself in the following. He says, إن تنكروني فأنا نجل الحسن صبط النبي المصطفى والمؤتمن هذا حسين كالأسير المرتهن بين أناس لاصقوا صوب المزان. If you deny who I am, then I am the son of Hassan. There is Hussein stranded and standing like a captive between people that fear nor Allah, nor do they fear the last day. Al-Qasim goes to the field representing Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam on the day of Ashura. And the enemies would say, كَأَنَّهُ فَيْلَقُ بَدْرٍ في ليلة تمامه وكماله. He is as if he is a full radiating moon in its completion and full brightness. Al-Qasim begins to fight, young man dragging his sword. As he is fighting, the left slipper of Al-Qasim snaps. When it snaps, brothers and sisters, Amr ibn Sa'id says, I saw this as an opportunity to go after him. I approached him as he was busy trying to fix that sandal until I raised my sword and I swung it over the head of Qasim, the son of Hassan al-Mujtaba. Typically when the companions would fall, they would send their salams to Imam al-Hussein, but this time Qasim did not, for how much the sword was heated and hurt. He called out, Uncle Hussein, come and aid me. Hussein, come and aid me, for now I have fallen. Aba Abdullah ran to the field. He killed the killer of Al-Qasim, and he began to lift and cradle his head on his lap. He began to say, my beloved Qasim, how hurtful it is that you call your uncle and he cannot help, and how sad it is that when he comes to help, he is of very little value. Aba Abdullah returned Al-Qasim, and you know where he laid him to rest? In the tent right next to Ali al-Akbar. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. فرج عنا يا Allah. Oh Allah, we ask you on behalf of the one buried in Jannat al-Baqi' to heal all of our sick ones, Ya Allah. Brothers and sisters, many have requested that we recite al-Fatiha for those who are ill, for those who have left us. Our dear brother, may Allah bless him, Brother Fadi, made a request for his relative. Can you give me one more time? Is it Rawda? Ranna, sorry, Saghir, correct? Her and many who have requested from their family members. A brother today messaged in, said that he has 3 of his family members that are in critical condition. One has also reached out from overseas. Many have requested du'as, brothers and sisters, for those that we have mentioned by name, those that have many who are ill, those who have yet to request but have them in their minds. Let us recite the ayat of the Quran that beseech Rabbul Alameen for illness and shifa 5 times altogether. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. All together. Amma yujibul مضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء أما يجيب أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. All together. أما ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. اللهم اكشف السوء والبلاء عنا يا الله. اللهم المرضى المنظورين شافي وعافهم يا الله. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اقضي حوائجنا. اللهم فرج عنا. اقضي ديوننا. اللهم لا تبعد بيننا وبين الحسين طرفة عين أبدا في الدنيا والآخرة. والله, we ask you on behalf of the ones buried in Jannat al-Baqi', and tomorrow's the Shahada of Imam Hassan. Inshallah we can all make it. Tomorrow's the last of the days, brothers and sisters. Attend if you could. May Allah bless you. On behalf of the one poisoned in Medina, Ya Allah, make us from his companions and allow us his ziyarah and his shafa'ah in the akhirah. And for all the ulama and the shuhada, ومن أوصانا بالدعاء رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة تسبقها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. بسم الله.
Continue the night with al-Atmiya with our brother Muhammad al-Muthanna. Greet him with the loudest of salawat.
لنا تسبيح وهمه لنا عباد حبنا إيمان بغضنا كفر نحن وسيلة السعادة يا حسن ابن علي يا حسن ابن علي